Is the CFMoto 300SS the best beginner bike you can buy right off the showroom floor? Let's talk about it.
All right, so a little backstory on this bike. This was actually my very first motorcycle ever. I learned to ride on this. I got into the hobby because of this bike. All right, so the seating position of this bike, I am a big fan of it. It's not as upright as a naked bike. You do have a slight bend in the knees, and you are a little bit, just a hair, leaned over the tank of this bike. But I wouldn't say it to the point where I would say don't get this, a naked bike's in and be more comfortable. I'm absolutely fine with this seating position. I got no complaints about it. So let's talk about the displacement of this bike. It comes equipped with, I want to say, 292cc single cylinder engine that puts out 29 horsepower at 18.7 foot-pounds of torque. Now, no, there's not a lot, and I'm going to be honest with you, when I originally bought this after a year or so, I wish I would have bought a Ninja 400 because I thought I was missing out. I thought I was missing out having the extra cylinder, having a bunch more power, but it's really not that much. I gotta tell you, there's not a huge difference in power between this and the Ninja 400, Z400, all that good stuff. So honestly, the only thing you really miss out on with this engine, being a single cylinder and all, is top speed. This bike tops out at around 95 miles an hour, I want to say, versus the Ninja 400s I think is like 112, 117. I might be wrong, but I know it's around that mark. So you do get a little more top end speed on those. But if you're buying a beginner bike, you shouldn't be going its top speed all the time anyways. So that's not a huge deal to me.
Now, let's talk about the looks of this bike for a minute. Coming back to the rear of this bike, it has a very clean looking tail. Reminds me of like the Yamaha R7, R6 type of tail with CFMoto's twist. So I do like that. Big fan of that. Overall, the bike is just a really aggressive looking bike for a 300. Nobody would ever know you're only on a 300.
All right, guys, how does this bike do on the highway? I'm jumping on right now, as you can see, so let's find out. I do feel like it gets up to 70 miles an hour, no problem, but like I said, this bike does top out at around 95, 96 miles an hour, so that is the downside of this engine. However, for it being a single cylinder and only having 30 horsepower again, I feel like it does really well. It doesn't feel like it's struggling. It's not vibrating nearly as much as I thought. It's honestly pretty smooth. We're at 7,000 RPM. The engine's a little high, but it doesn't feel uncomfortable. I'm fine cruising at this speed. As far as wind goes, honestly, it's a little windy. I would say it's about in between a standard naked bike and a full fair sport bike. I can duck down a little here and there's a little less wind, but I do get a little bit of wind in the face. It's not really that bad. It's hardly noticeable though, so I'm not really complaining about it. Now, the reason I bought this bike was I went to a dealership to get a quote on a Ninja 400, which at the time was like my dream bike. And the guy originally told me, yeah, we're looking at probably 5 out the door at the most. He ran down really briefly all the fees and all that. And I'm like, okay, you know, that's not bad. I can do that. Anyways, time comes for me to get the bike. I go back there. I'm like, okay, let's do it. I want to get this bike. And he wouldn't send me the purchase agreement for me to get the loan because I was financing it at the time. So I ended up going straight through my bank. And the bank's like, okay, we can give you a loan, but we need the purchase agreement before we can give you the loan, which I feel like is pretty standard. Sent it over just thinking I wouldn't look at it and give it to the bank. Well, no, he quoted me 7 out the door for a Ninja 400. Like, what the heck? 7 grand for a Ninja 400. That was 4 years ago too, is ridiculous in my opinion. I don't know what you guys have paid for them, but to me, I'm like, hell to the no. So I did not get that Ninja 400 because I did not want to spend $7,000 on a motorcycle, not knowing if I was going to actually like the hobby or not. So after I got the bad news that it was going to be 7 grand, I'm like, okay, let's go try out a couple more dealerships, see what quotes they give me. So I ended up going to one of my local dealerships and they had these CF Motos in stock. And I'm like, hey, that's not a bad looking bike. And at the time I didn't know anything about engines. I know the Ninja 400's faster. It has an extra cylinder, blah, blah, blah. It's a beginner bike. You're going to sell it in 1 year. It doesn't matter. Anyways, I went in and they had these machines. I'm like, that's really good looking. I like that more actually than the way the Ninja 400 looked. And at the time, again, didn't know a lot about engines. I just went with it because I liked how it looked. Pretty typical white girl thing to do. Anyways, I ended up buying that bike. It was 5.5 out the door, if I remember correctly, and I got my first motorcycle, something to learn on, something to rip. All right, so the reason I love this bike, and I think it's so great for the beginners out there, is the fact that you can walk out of the showroom floor with a brand new one for $5,000. $500. That is a great price for out the door, let alone the tech package you get with this bike is crazy. You're getting ABS, which is very good for beginners that don't know progressive braking. You get a full color TFT display, and you get 2 different modes, Sport and Eco, and you can get the CFMoto app, which has a GPS tracker, which is really cool because you can track your bike. If somebody steals it, you know where it's at. It's a really cool feature they have. It also shows your trips, your miles an hour, your lean angle, a whole bunch of cool stuff. So there is a lot of good tech on this bike, and at the time when I was looking for my first bike, a lot of the other beginner bikes didn't have that. Let alone, it's just a really good looking bike. So overall, would I recommend this to somebody starting out, a beginner? Yes, I absolutely would. I've had a blast on this bike. It's been very reliable. I've had 0 issues. And overall, I just really think it's a great bike.